In the remote town of Willow Creek, Alaska, the winters were long, harsh, and unrelenting. Snow fell for months on end, blanketing the jagged mountains and frozen rivers in a pristine, white silence. Most people in Willow Creek were hardy, accustomed to the challenges of isolation and extreme cold. Yet, among them was a girl who seemed even more attuned to the wilderness than anyone else, Emma Larson. She was 17, small in stature, and quiet to the point that many of her classmates often overlooked her. But beneath her calm exterior lay a mind sharp as a razor and a body trained by years of traversing the unforgiving Alaskan wilderness. Emma had always preferred solitude. While other teenagers hung out in the local cafe or gathered around the town's lone movie screen, she roamed the forests, climbed icy ridges, and observed wildlife with a patient intensity that most adults envied. She could track a hare across a fresh layer of snow or spot a bear's tracks in the mud before anyone else noticed. Her family called her quiet but capable, a phrase that perfectly captured the essence of who she was. She spoke sparingly, but when she did, her words were precise, deliberate, and often carried more weight than those of the loudest people in town. Her mornings began before dawn. Emma would wake to the soft creak of her cabin floorboards and the faint glow of the northern lights through her frosted windows. She brewed a pot of tea, laced with wild herbs she gathered herself, and ate a simple breakfast of bread and smoked fish. Her father, a rugged man who had worked as a trapper and carpenter his entire life, often watched her in awe. "She's more prepared for the wild than some men twice her age," he would mutter under his breath. Her mother, gentle and practical, worried constantly. "She's too small for the things she does sometimes," she would sigh, though she knew there was no stopping her. School for Emma was more of a formality than a place of learning. She excelled in reading, mathematics, and natural sciences. But her mind always wandered to the forests, the frozen rivers, and the peaks beyond town. She could spend hours sketching wildlife, noting snow patterns, or simply observing how the wind bent the trees in different directions. Teachers described her as exceptionally focused, if somewhat aloof, while her classmates often dismissed her as the quiet girl who never talks. Few realized that beneath her reserved exterior, Emma had skills that could rival any seasoned survivalist. Her life was structured around routines, but not in a dull way. Emma thrived on challenges. She would wake before sunrise, hike through knee-deep snow, and check traps she had set the day before. She knew every shortcut through the forest, every hidden crevice in the cliffs, and every tree hollow where birds nested. Her survival skills were not just theoretical, they were tested daily. She had learned how to read animal tracks, identify edible plants, and start fires even when the wood was damp or covered in snow. Her knowledge of the land was so precise that she could traverse miles of treacherous terrain without ever getting lost. Despite her quiet nature, Emma was deeply observant of people. She could read expressions, gestures, and tones with startling accuracy. When a stranger entered town, she could tell their intentions within minutes. This skill, combined with her wilderness training, gave her a unique edge, a combination of intelligence, intuition, and practicality that few could match. Locals respected her, even if they didn't always understand her. Children often trailed behind her during hikes, fascinated by the way she moved through the forest, like she belonged there, as if the trees and snow themselves acknowledged her presence. One morning in late November, as the sun barely crested the horizon, Emma prepared for a solo hike along the edge of Mount Kiska, a peak she had explored countless times. The wind was bitter, biting through layers of wool and leather, but Emma barely flinched. She strapped on snowshoes, checked her backpack for essentials: rope, compass, water, dried fish, and her father's old hunting knife, and stepped into the pristine snow. Her breath formed clouds in the air, and the silence of the forest was almost sacred. Every crunch of her snowshoes echoed loudly, yet seemed to harmonize with the rhythm of the wilderness. As she climbed higher, she noticed the subtle signs of an approaching storm. The sky darkened with heavy clouds, and the distant trees swayed more violently than usual. Emma paused, surveying the landscape with practiced eyes. She saw faint tracks in the snow, likely from a fox, winding across the ridge. She noted their direction, speed, and depth, details others would overlook, which mattered immensely to someone who understood the forest's language. She smiled to herself. "They'll survive," she whispered softly, though there was no one to hear her. These small observations, these tiny insights, were her way of connecting with the world, a language she had mastered through years of careful attention. Emma's mind wandered to the stories she had heard about the soldiers who trained in Alaska. Many had perished in the harsh conditions, lost to snowstorms, avalanches, or icy rivers. She felt a strange kinship with them, even though she had never met them. In her heart, she knew that understanding the wilderness was about respect, patience, and adaptability, qualities she had cultivated naturally. The wilderness did not forgive mistakes, and Emma had learned this early in life. A small slip-on, ice, a misjudged path, or a lapse in preparation could mean death. And yet, there was beauty in the risk, clarity in the silence, and a profound sense of purpose in surviving where others would fail. By mid-morning, Emma had reached a secluded ridge overlooking the valley below. The town of Willow Creek was a tiny speck amid the vast snowfields, smoke rising from chimneys in thin spirals. She paused to catch her breath, taking in the sweeping view. The mountains stretched endlessly in every direction, and the wind howled like a living entity. She felt a mixture of awe and responsibility. Though small in stature, she understood the enormity of the world around her. She belonged to this wilderness, as much a part of it as the towering spruce or the frozen rivers. As Emma prepared to descend, a sense of anticipation settled over her. Something felt different that day, though she could not yet identify it. The snow was quieter, the air sharper, and an unusual tension seemed to hum beneath the surface. Emma adjusted her backpack, tightened her gloves, and began her careful descent. She moved like a shadow, blending into the white landscape, every step deliberate, every motion precise. In her mind, she rehearsed navigation strategies, survival tactics, and worst-case scenarios. She trusted herself completely, yet she remained vigilant. Little did she know, the events about to unfold would demand more from her than any solo hike, any tracking mission, or any survival test she had ever faced. The quiet girl from Alaska, overlooked by most and underestimated by all, was about to confront a challenge that would test not only her skills, but her courage, her resolve, and her humanity. And in the process, she would reveal that sometimes the smallest, quietest people are capable of the greatest heroics. The morning news in Willow Creek arrived in the form of the town's old radio, its crackling voice delivering words that seemed almost unreal. A military search and rescue team had gone missing during a high-risk training exercise somewhere deep in the Alaskan wilderness. Their mission had been routine, or so it was thought, but something had gone terribly wrong. Blizzards, avalanches, and icy rivers had all claimed lives before, and this time the danger was no different. The news spread quickly, carried from the radio to the small town cafe, to the local grocery store, and even to the frozen riverbanks where fishermen had set their nets hours earlier. Emma Larson sat at her usual corner in the cafe, her dark eyes fixed on the radio. Around her, townspeople murmured in worry and disbelief. The cold that always seemed to live in the Alaskan air now felt heavier, pressing down on everyone's shoulders. Most people spoke in hushed tones, shaking their heads, recounting past tragedies in the wilderness. But Emma, ever quiet and observant, felt a strange, intense pull in her chest. The news wasn't just words to her. It was a call. A call she could not ignore. The soldiers were trained, experienced, and resilient, but the wilderness respected no human skill. Emma knew this instinctively. She had learned the unforgiving lessons of nature through years of trial and error. She had seen how a sudden storm could blind even the most careful traveler, how an icy river could sweep someone away in moments, and how the forest could swallow a person whole if they weren't prepared. And yet, despite the danger, she felt that she could help. A quiet certainty settled in her mind, one she could not explain. I can find them. Emma left the cafe, her boots crunching against the snow-laden streets. She passed the familiar shops, the town hall, the frozen playground where children's laughter once rang out in summer, but now lay silent under ice. Her thoughts raced, calculating, analyzing every possible scenario. She retrieved her maps, each line and contour memorized over countless hikes. She considered the weather patterns, the likely paths the soldiers might have taken, the dangers that lay in wait. Then, almost instinctively, she began assembling her supplies. Her backpack held essentials: a rope carefully coiled, a compass, a set of knives and axes, water purification tablets, and dried fish she had prepared herself. She packed extra thermal blankets, matches, and emergency rations. Every item was weighed, adjusted, and secured with meticulous care. She double-checked her clothing, layers of wool and leather designed to keep her warm in sub-zero temperatures, boots reinforced for treacherous ice, gloves thick but flexible. Each preparation was deliberate, a silent promise to herself that she would not fail. Emma's parents noticed her unusual focus. Her mother approached, worry etched into her face. "Emma, what are you thinking? It's dangerous out there, even for trained soldiers." "You're just a girl," she said, her voice trembling. Emma looked at her calmly, though her eyes held a fierce determination. "I know the land, Mom. I can help." "I have to try," she replied, her voice steady, almost adult in its conviction. Her father remained silent, his brow furrowed, but a hint of pride shone in his eyes. He knew her capabilities, and he knew that arguing with her would be pointless. By late morning, the town's official rescue teams had assembled. Snowmobiles lined the roads, helicopters prepared to lift off, and search parties organized along the valley and the ridges. The soldiers were experienced, but even they were nervous. Families of the missing watched anxiously, hoping for a miracle that seemed increasingly unlikely. Emma, unnoticed amid the chaos, slipped quietly toward the edge of town, clutching her backpack. She wasn't going to wait for permission. The wilderness was calling, and she could hear it clearly. The first hours of her journey were deceptively calm. The snow crunched beneath her boots, the wind whispered through the trees, and the occasional bird cawed in the distance. But Emma was alert, scanning for any signs of trouble. Fresh tracks, broken branches, disturbances in the snow. Every small detail mattered. She noted the direction the wind was blowing, the density of the snow, and even the color of the ice beneath her feet. Her mind worked like a compass, orienting her not only to the landscape, but to the likely paths the missing soldiers might have taken. By mid-afternoon, she reached the first ridge that would take her deep into the wilderness. The temperature had dropped sharply, and clouds gathered ominously overhead. Emma paused, adjusting her pack, and took a deep breath. Her heart beat steadily, a rhythm of both anticipation and caution. Ahead lay miles of uncharted paths, frozen rivers, and dense forests. But she felt ready. She had always thrived in isolation, in extreme conditions. This was no different except this time. Lives depended on her success. Hours turned into an exhausting day as Emma traversed snowfields and dense forest. She built small markers to trace her route, avoiding steep cliffs and icy patches that could betray a misstep. Each step forward required concentration, as one slip could mean injury or death. She rested sparingly, melting snow for water and rationing her food carefully. The wilderness was alive with sound, the creak of trees in the wind, the howl of distant wolves, the faint roar of a partially frozen river. To anyone else, it would have been terrifying. To Emma, it was a map, a guide, a language she understood instinctively. As night fell, a blizzard rolled in unexpectedly. Visibility dropped to almost zero, the wind whipping snow into her face and freezing her eyelashes. She huddled under a dense cluster of trees, setting up a temporary shelter with a tarp and rope she carried. The cold gnawed at her fingers, but she persisted, determined to rest only briefly before continuing. Inside her shelter, she reviewed her plan again. Trace likely paths, follow signs of human passage, avoid obvious dangers, and maintain hope. Every thought was precise, deliberate. The wilderness could test her resolve, but it could not defeat her if she remained vigilant. Sleep came only in fragments. Every sound, the snap of a branch, the howl of wind, kept her alert. Her mind replayed the images from the news, the faces of the missing soldiers, their hopeful expressions, their families' anxious anticipation. The thought of them motivated her, kept her moving forward despite fatigue and cold. Emma understood that the wilderness respected skill, but also determination and courage. Those qualities would carry her where equipment and training alone could not. By dawn, the blizzard had eased, leaving a world transformed. The snow sparkled under the pale sun, masking treacherous ice beneath its surface. Emma set off again, her senses sharp, every step calculated. She moved silently, a shadow gliding across the white expanse, tracking subtle signs. Footprints partially covered by fresh snow, broken branches, faint depressions in the ice. Each clue brought her closer to the soldiers. She felt a mix of tension and exhilaration. Each discovery was a victory, each step a challenge overcome. Hours later, she reached a partially frozen river. The water beneath was dark and rushing, swallowing anything that fell in. Emma paused, analyzing the safest crossing. Using her rope and makeshift ice spikes, she carefully made her way across, testing each step before committing her weight. Her heart pounded, but her hands were steady. This river had claimed lives before, and she knew better than to underestimate it. Step by step, she made it across, keeping both balance and morale intact. She whispered to herself, almost in prayer, "We're getting closer." By late afternoon, Emma's keen eyes caught a sign of human presence. A torn piece of military fabric snagged on a branch, partially buried in snow. Her pulse quickened. The missing soldiers were near. She paused for a moment, allowing herself a brief sense of relief, then pressed forward. She knew the hardest part was still ahead, finding them alive, assessing their condition, and guiding them back to safety. The wilderness had not finished testing her yet, but she felt a quiet confidence in her abilities. That night, she camped again, closer than ever to the search zone. Exhaustion and hunger weighed on her, but hope carried her spirit. She could almost imagine the soldiers, trapped and frightened, waiting for rescue. And somewhere deep in her heart, she knew that no one, not the blizzard, not the mountains, not the harshness of nature, could stop her. Emma Larson, the quiet girl from Alaska, had answered the call. She was ready to confront the impossible. The morning air was bitter, carrying the tang of ice and pine. Emma Larson woke beneath the sparse shelter she had constructed the night before, her body stiff but her mind alert. She had slept only in short fragments, the sounds of the wilderness keeping her on edge. Wolves howled in the distance, and the snow-covered trees creaked ominously in the wind. Yet she felt an unshakable resolve. The missing soldiers were out there, somewhere in this vast expanse, and she alone had the knowledge and skill to find them. Every instinct told her to move forward, and she obeyed without hesitation. Emma packed her supplies with meticulous care, checking a rope, sharpening her knife, and wrapping her hands in extra layers to stave off frostbite. Each item had a purpose. Each step required precision. The snow beneath her boots crunched sharply as she moved, every sound echoing through the frozen forest. She navigated using landmarks she had memorized from previous hikes, avoiding treacherous ice patches and unstable cliffs. Her breath came in short, controlled bursts as she climbed a ridge overlooking a vast valley. From this vantage point, she scanned the terrain, her eyes trained to notice the slightest anomalies. A branch broken unnaturally, a faint footprint half buried by snow, the glint of metal under ice. As the hours passed, Emma's journey became increasingly perilous. Snow drifts reached her waist, the wind stinging her cheeks and fingers. Every step demanded careful calculation. One misstep could send her sliding down an icy slope, or worse, into the freezing waters of a partially frozen river. Yet her mind remained calm and precise. Years of training and solitary survival had honed her instincts, and now they served a higher purpose. She was no longer hiking for exploration or sport. She was navigating life-and-death terrain to save others. At midday, Emma stumbled upon her first clue, a set of boot prints partially covered in fresh snow. She knelt, examining the impressions carefully. They were military boots, larger than hers, heading in the direction of a narrow ravine. Her pulse quickened. This was the trail she had been searching for. Carefully, she adjusted her path to follow the prints, testing every step for stability before committing her weight. The ravine below was narrow and treacherous, its icy walls slick with frozen condensation. But Emma moved confidently, lowering herself carefully using the rope she had packed, her muscles straining with the effort. Midway through the descent, a sudden crack echoed through the air. A small sheet of ice had broken beneath her. Emma's heart skipped a beat, but she held her balance, steadying herself against the rock. She exhaled slowly, whispering to herself, "Stay focused. One step at a time." The wilderness offered no mercy, and she understood it completely. Every sound, every shadow, every shift in the wind could mean danger. Yet she pressed onward, driven by determination and an unspoken connection to the soldiers whose lives depended on her success. By afternoon, she reached the base of the ravine and spotted additional signs. A tattered jacket snagged on a branch, a small trail of broken branches as if someone had struggled through. Emma's heart pounded with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. She was close, so close that she could almost feel the presence of those she was searching for. She paused briefly to assess her surroundings, noting possible hazards. An unstable ice shelf nearby, thin snow bridges over deep crevices, and patches of slick, hidden ice that could betray even the most careful traveler. She mapped her route in her mind, calculating risk and reward for every step. As she advanced, the storm clouds overhead thickened. Snowflakes began falling in earnest, reducing visibility and increasing the danger. Emma adjusted her scarf and goggles, pressing forward. She dug into her backpack, checking her emergency supplies and reinforcing her rope harness. Every step demanded complete focus, and fatigue threatened to slow her progress. But Emma had been trained, through both instinct and experience, to endure. Her mind blocked out fear, and her body followed with unwavering determination. By late afternoon, she reached a clearing where she noticed more significant evidence. Footprints, converging toward a collapsed portion of the forest. The signs were unmistakable. Someone had been there, struggling, injured perhaps. Emma's heart quickened, but she slowed her pace, knowing that caution now was more important than speed. One wrong move could endanger both her and the soldiers she was trying to find. She crouched low, scanning the area for more clues, piecing together their likely path. Each observation brought her closer to her goal, each detail a small victory against the indifferent wilderness. Suddenly, a low groan carried across the snow, faint but distinct. Emma froze, listening intently. The sound repeated a weak, pained call. Her heart leapt. The soldiers were alive. Carefully, she adjusted her direction, following the sound while remaining alert for potential dangers. Every movement was deliberate, every step calculated to avoid detection of unstable ice or hidden pits. Her mind raced, planning how she would approach, how she could assess injuries, and how she could guide them to safety. This was no longer a solo survival exercise. Lives depended on her precision and judgment. Hours passed in tense silence, Emma moving like a shadow through the snow-covered forest. The wind howled around her, carrying the faint groans and occasional shouted names of the soldiers. She followed the sounds carefully, stopping frequently to rest, reassess, and recalibrate her route. Fatigue threatened to slow her, but she pressed onward, ignoring the pain in her muscles, the chill in her bones. She was a force of nature herself now, attuned to the wilderness in a way that made her a formidable guide and protector. Finally, near twilight, Emma spotted them. The soldiers were trapped behind a fallen tree, partially buried in snow. Some were injured, their faces pale and lips blue from the cold. Their eyes widened at the sight of the quiet girl, disbelief written across their expressions. Who are you?" one of them gasped. Emma ignored their questions for a moment, assessing their condition, calculating how best to free them. Calmly, she instructed them to remain still while she removed debris and secured ropes for safe movement. As she worked, she could sense their initial skepticism. How could a teenage girl navigate the harsh wilderness better than trained soldiers? How could she anticipate dangers they couldn't see? But Emma's calm demeanor, her precise movements, and her unwavering confidence began to instill hope. One by one, she helped them rise, guiding their steps carefully, teaching them to trust her instincts, and showing them that survival depended as much on strategy and knowledge as on strength and training. By nightfall, Emma had secured a temporary camp near the ravine, a safe space shielded from the wind. She built a small fire, melting snow for water and preparing rations. The soldiers, exhausted and weak, sat huddled around her, their trust in her growing with each passing minute. She spoke little, but each word was deliberate, instructive, and reassuring. She demonstrated how to move safely over snow and ice, how to detect hidden dangers, and how to stay warm in sub-zero temperatures. Through her quiet leadership, she transformed fear into determination. As the night deepened, Emma kept watch. The storm raged outside, snow swirling violently, yet inside their small shelter, a fragile warmth persisted. The soldiers began to understand the magnitude of her skills. They realized that the quiet girl who had seemed unremarkable was, in fact, their guide, their protector, and the difference between life and death. Emma Larson had crossed paths with fate and chosen courage over fear, skill over hesitation, and determination over doubt. The wilderness, vast and indifferent, had met its match. The storm had not relented by dawn. Snow whipped violently across the ravine, driven by a merciless wind that cut through every layer of clothing Emma and the soldiers wore. Visibility was nearly zero, and the forest itself seemed transformed into a white, shifting maze. Trees groaned and swayed under the weight of snow, their branches threatening to collapse without warning. The soldiers huddled close, shivering from cold and exhaustion, while Emma methodically prepared their limited supplies for the journey ahead. "Listen carefully," she said, her voice calm but commanding, carrying over the howl of the wind. "We move together, step by step. One wrong move, and the snow could betray us." Her eyes scanned the terrain, noting unstable patches of ice, crevices hidden beneath fresh drifts, and thin snow bridges over rushing water. She had memorized the safest route down the ravine and beyond, but every step now required vigilance. The soldiers, some injured and all weary, followed her lead, relying on her expertise and courage. The first obstacle appeared almost immediately, a steep slope blanketed in snow that had begun to loosen from the previous night's storm. Emma knelt briefly, testing the snow for stability, and tied a rope around a sturdy tree. "Hold on," she instructed. One by one, the soldiers descended under her careful guidance, each movement deliberate. The snow threatened to give way beneath their weight, but Emma's steady hands and clear instructions kept everyone safe. She moved with a fluidity born of years navigating such terrain, a stark contrast to the cautious, hesitant steps of the soldiers. By late morning, they had cleared the ravine and entered a dense forest. Snow accumulated heavily on the branches above, sometimes dropping suddenly in wet, freezing sheets. Visibility was poor, and exhaustion began to take its toll. Emma stopped periodically, checking the condition of each soldier, redistributing weight, and providing encouragement. Her calm presence acted as an anchor amid chaos. "We're stronger than we think," she said softly, but with conviction. "Keep moving. Keep your heads clear. The forest respects the careful and punishes the reckless." Hours into their trek, they reached a partially frozen river. Ice floes drifted dangerously over a rushing current, and the water's roar echoed ominously in the narrow canyon. The soldiers froze, uncertain of how to cross. Emma assessed the ice and rocks carefully, calculating weight distribution and the safest path. She demonstrated first, testing each step before guiding the soldiers. One misstep could plunge them into the freezing waters below, but Emma's calm, confident movements inspired trust. Step by step, they made it across, the tension leaving their bodies only after the last person stepped onto solid ground. The day wore on, the weather worsening. Snow fell in heavy sheets, wind gusting like a living predator. Emma built temporary shelters when needed, melting snow for water and rationing their food carefully. The soldiers followed her lead, gradually adopting the survival techniques she demonstrated. They learned to read subtle signs in the snow, to detect hidden dangers, and to conserve energy while maintaining movement. The quiet Alaskan girl, once overlooked, became their teacher, their guide, and the difference between life and death. Despite the harsh conditions, Emma's mind remained sharp. She observed every detail, the way the snow settled around fallen trees, the faint disturbances that could indicate unstable ice, and the subtle sound shifts that revealed wildlife nearby. She was constantly evaluating, recalculating routes, and ensuring that each step forward minimized risk. The soldiers began to depend on her judgment entirely, trusting her instinctive connection to the wilderness over their own training. By late afternoon, fatigue had set in. The soldiers were bruised, frostbitten, and shivering uncontrollably. Emma paused, allowing them to rest briefly in a small alcove beneath a snow-covered rock outcropping. She melted snow for water, rationed their remaining food, and inspected injuries. One soldier had a deep gash on his arm. Another showed early signs of hypothermia. Emma's calm and methodical approach turned moments of panic into controlled survival procedures. "Stay calm," she said, wrapping a makeshift bandage around the injured arm. "We keep moving carefully, and we get through this." Night fell early, bringing with it a deeper cold. The wind intensified, forcing Emma to build an improvised snow shelter for the group. They huddled together for warmth, sharing the sparse rations and listening to the storm's fury outside. Despite the dire circumstances, she took moments to instill hope, telling them, "We've made it this far. Tomorrow, we move closer to safety. Every step counts." Her voice, calm and reassuring, became a lifeline for the soldiers, giving them strength when they had little left. Sleep was nearly impossible in the cold and snow, but Emma ensured that the soldiers rested in short rotations while she kept watch. Every crack of ice, every howl of the wind, and every distant sound could indicate danger. Her vigilance never wavered. She reviewed their route in her mind, preparing contingency plans in case the snow shifted or the terrain became impassable. She knew that survival depended not only on physical skill, but on constant awareness and adaptability. The next morning, Emma led them through a series of steep ridges and narrow paths. The snow had accumulated dangerously overnight, and the risk of avalanches loomed. She paused frequently, listening for shifts in the snowpack and directing the soldiers to safer paths. Every step demanded attention, every decision carried weight, and Emma met each challenge with unwavering focus. She remained the steady force in a chaotic and indifferent wilderness, a guide the soldiers had come to rely on implicitly. By midday, the group reached a plateau, offering a sweeping view of the valley ahead. The snow-covered landscape stretched endlessly, treacherous yet breathtakingly beautiful. For a moment, Emma allowed herself to admire the scenery, her breath fogging in the cold air. The soldiers, exhausted but motivated, began to understand the extent of her abilities. The quiet girl they had once underestimated had become their anchor, their protector, and a symbol of resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. As they pressed forward, Emma noticed subtle signs that indicated human activity ahead: partially hidden footprints, a torn piece of fabric snagged on a branch, and disturbed snow patterns suggesting movement. Her pulse quickened. They were closing in on the soldiers' original location. But Emma knew that discovery would bring new challenges. She would need to assess injuries, provide immediate care, and navigate them through some of the most dangerous terrain yet. Her mind raced, planning every possible scenario. The wilderness was relentless, and survival demanded complete attention. By late afternoon, the group approached a narrow gorge flanked by icy cliffs. The soldiers hesitated, unsure how to descend safely. Emma tied ropes to secure their passage and demonstrated how to move carefully along the slippery ledges. The wind howled fiercely, threatening to push them off balance. But Emma's calm instructions and steady presence gave them courage. One by one, they made it across, the tension leaving their bodies only when the last soldier reached the base safely. Exhaustion and hunger weighed heavily on the group as night approached again. Emma built another temporary shelter, starting a small fire using dried twigs and her survival matches. She melted snow for water and prepared the soldiers for another harsh night. They huddled together, relying on her for warmth, guidance, and hope. The quiet girl from Alaska, underestimated by nearly everyone, had become their lifeline. She had turned fear into strategy, chaos into order, and despair into determination. As they settled for the night, Emma remained vigilant, watching the storm rage outside their shelter. Her mind analyzed every movement of the snow, every gust of wind, and every distant sound. She planned the next day's route carefully, ensuring they would avoid hazards and maximize safety. Despite her youth and quiet demeanor, Emma Larson had emerged as a formidable force, resilient, fearless, and utterly prepared to lead the soldiers out of the wilderness alive. The morning air was sharp and biting, carrying a scent of frozen pine and snow that seemed almost alive. Emma Larson woke beneath the sparse shelter she had built the night before, her body stiff and sore, but her mind razor-sharp. The storm had eased slightly, leaving the forest eerily silent. Every sound, the crunch of snow beneath her boots, the distant crack of ice, even the faint rustle of branches, was magnified in the stillness. Her senses were heightened, every instinct alert, every movement calculated. She knew that today could be the day she finally found the missing soldiers. Emma led the group carefully through the dense forest, her eyes scanning every inch of snow, ice, and tree line for signs of human presence. Hours of meticulous observation paid off when she noticed something unusual, a faint indentation in the snow, partially covered by fresh flakes. Kneeling, she examined it closely. Military boot prints, larger than hers, with a depth suggesting exhaustion and struggle. Her pulse quickened. The soldiers were near, and for the first time in days, hope surged through her veins. She signaled the others to move cautiously, whispering instructions about keeping low, avoiding unnecessary noise, and observing their surroundings. The forest was deceptive. Fallen branches, unstable snow patches, and hidden crevices could easily turn a small misstep into disaster. Emma had trained for this, but the responsibility of guiding 6 soldiers, some injured, all exhausted through such treacherous terrain, weighed heavily on her. Still, she pressed on, determined to fulfill her self-imposed mission. She refused to falter. Hours passed as they followed the tracks deeper into the wilderness. Emma noticed subtle signs, disturbed snow patterns indicating a struggle, broken twigs suggesting someone had fallen, and scraps of clothing snagged on branches. Her heart raced with both urgency and caution. Each clue brought them closer, but also heightened the stakes. One false move could compromise the entire rescue. She paused frequently, scanning the horizon, listening for sounds that might indicate proximity, and mentally mapping possible escape routes. By mid-afternoon, the forest opened into a small clearing, partially sheltered by rocky outcroppings. Emma froze, her breath catching in her throat. Ahead, she saw movement, faint but unmistakable. 6 figures, huddled together, shivering and weak, struggling to rise from the snow. Their faces were pale, their uniforms torn and muddied, and their expressions a mix of fear, confusion, and relief. For a moment, disbelief passed through Emma herself. This was real. The soldiers were alive. She had found them. She approached slowly, hands raised in reassurance. "I'm here to help," she said calmly. "Follow me. Stay close and move carefully. You're safe now." The soldiers stared at her, their exhaustion and doubt mingling with awe. One of them, the apparent leader, squinted through the snow and muttered, Who are you?" Emma's response was simple but authoritative. "Someone who knows how to get you out alive." The soldiers hesitated, unsure if they should trust a teenage girl navigating the wilderness with more confidence than anyone else. Emma ignored their questions for the moment, focusing instead on assessing their injuries. One had a deep cut across his arm, another a twisted ankle, and several showed early signs of hypothermia. Emma moved with practiced precision, tearing strips of fabric to bind wounds, wrapping frostbitten fingers in extra cloth, and guiding them to a small, partially sheltered area she had identified. Her calm demeanor was contagious. Gradually, the soldiers began to relax, realizing that her knowledge of the wilderness was their best chance of survival. "I need to know how everyone is feeling," Emma said, crouching beside the soldier with the injured arm. "Pain, cold, or weakness, tell me." One by one, they described their conditions. Her mind raced as she prioritized care, assigning small roles to each soldier to help with movement and navigation. "We'll take it slowly," she instructed. "Step by step. No rushing. We survive together." Her leadership was quiet but absolute, and the soldiers, despite their initial skepticism, began to follow her instructions without question. Emma spent the next hour stabilizing their injuries, rationing their meager food supply, and encouraging them to drink water she had melted from snow. She instructed them on keeping warm, huddling together, and moving only when necessary. Her eyes scanned the clearing constantly, aware that danger could approach from any direction. Avalanches, predators, or unstable snow could all become deadly. She anticipated every obstacle before it appeared, guiding the group with the precision and calm of someone who had spent a lifetime surviving alone in this unforgiving land. As the sun began to dip low, Emma surveyed the path ahead. The remaining distance to safety would be arduous, requiring careful navigation of narrow ridges, icy slopes, and treacherous rivers. She communicated her plan clearly, demonstrating how to move across unstable ice, how to use ropes for support, and how to watch for subtle signs of danger. The soldiers followed diligently, inspired by her competence and unwavering courage. They had come to trust her instinctively, realizing that their lives depended on it. The discovery of the soldiers brought a mixture of relief and renewed urgency. Emma knew that finding them was only half the battle. The journey back through the wilderness would be even more challenging. She kept them focused, moving slowly but steadily through the snow-covered forest. Every step was calculated, every movement deliberate. Her mind constantly reassessed the terrain, predicting hazards and guiding the soldiers safely around them. The group moved like a coordinated unit, their trust in Emma's abilities solidifying with each successful maneuver. By nightfall, they reached a small natural alcove that offered some protection from the wind. Emma quickly set up a temporary shelter, using branches and her survival tarp to shield the soldiers from the cold. She built a small fire, melting snow for water and warming the wounded. The soldiers huddled close, exhausted but grateful, their skepticism now fully replaced with admiration. For the first time since their disappearance, they allowed themselves to hope. They realized that the quiet girl from Alaska, underestimated and overlooked by nearly everyone, had become their guide, their protector, and the reason they might survive. That night, as the wind howled outside their shelter, Emma kept watch. Every creak of ice, every distant howl, every subtle movement in the snow was noted and analyzed. She planned the next day's route, anticipating obstacles and calculating risks. The soldiers, resting under her guidance, began to share stories quietly, their voices tinged with awe and gratitude. They had survived the storm and the wilderness thus far, but it was Emma's skill, courage, and calm determination that had truly saved them. For Emma, there was little time for self-congratulation. The discovery of the soldiers was monumental, but the real challenge, bringing them safely back to civilization, was only beginning. She reviewed every detail, the condition of each soldier, the safest paths, the weather forecast, and the timing required for each maneuver. Her mind was a constant whirl of planning, assessment, and anticipation. Failure was not an option. Every life depended on her competence and courage, and she was determined not to let the wilderness claim any more victims. As the night deepened, Emma allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. The snow-covered trees, the frozen rivers, and the biting wind were no longer just obstacles. They were part of a test, one she had passed by finding the soldiers alive. Yet the journey ahead would test her further, demanding not only skill, but leadership, endurance, and unwavering resolve. She glanced at the soldiers, sleeping in exhausted but secure positions, and felt a quiet surge of determination. They had survived against the odds, and together they would navigate the perils of the Alaskan wilderness toward safety. The first light of dawn crept over the snow-covered peaks, casting long, pale shadows across the rugged terrain. Emma Larson had been awake for hours, scanning the forest for potential hazards while ensuring that the 6 soldiers slept as safely as possible through the night. Fatigue gnawed at her muscles, and frostbitten fingers protested every movement, but her mind remained sharp, calculating, and alert. The discovery of the missing soldiers was only the beginning. Now she had to lead them back through the unforgiving wilderness, navigating avalanches, ice-laden rivers, and treacherous slopes. The responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders, yet she bore it with the calm precision that had brought them this far. "Everyone up," she said, her voice calm but commanding, cutting through the stillness of the morning. The soldiers stirred, shivering and stiff, their expressions a mix of gratitude and uncertainty. They had survived because of her skill and determination, but the journey back would test every ounce of courage they possessed. Emma methodically checked each person's condition: frostbite, exhaustion, injuries. The soldier with the gash across his arm winced as she tightened his bandage. "We move carefully," she instructed. "Slowly, deliberately. Every step counts." The first challenge of the day was a steep, icy ridge leading down into a narrow valley. Emma assessed the terrain carefully, testing snow stability with her pole and probing for hidden crevices. She tied ropes to sturdy trees and secured the soldiers one by one, demonstrating precise movements for maintaining balance and weight distribution. The wind whipped around them, forcing snow into their faces and reducing visibility. Each careful step required complete focus. Emma's leadership shone through in every instruction, every adjustment of the ropes, and every word of encouragement whispered over the roar of the wind. "Don't rush," she said, guiding the soldier with the twisted ankle. "Let the rope hold your weight. One step at a time." The soldier hesitated, fear flickering in his eyes. Emma's calm, unwavering gaze met his. "I've done this before. Trust me." Slowly he moved, step by step, following her guidance. The others watched, taking cues from her actions and regaining confidence in their own ability to navigate the treacherous path. In that moment, Emma's quiet strength transformed doubt into courage, fear into disciplined focus. Hours passed in painstaking progress. Emma rotated roles among the soldiers to distribute energy and maintain alertness. She built small snow shelters at intervals, melted snow for water, and shared meager rations, all while ensuring that they maintained their morale. Her knowledge of the wilderness was precise and instinctive. She could identify weak snow bridges, detect avalanches before they formed, and track hidden ice pockets. Every movement was calculated, every decision deliberate, every instruction measured to maximize survival chances. By midday, they reached a partially frozen river, its waters raging beneath sheets of precarious ice. Emma crouched and examined the surface carefully, testing thickness and stability. She constructed makeshift ice anchors using her rope and ice spikes, demonstrating the safest method of crossing. Step by step, she led the soldiers across, instructing them to move slowly and deliberately, one at a time. The rushing water below was a constant reminder that a single mistake could be fatal. But Emma's unwavering confidence and precise instructions instilled trust, and one by one, they reached solid ground. The soldiers began to rely on her not only for physical guidance, but for strategic decisions as well. Emma allocated small responsibilities. One soldier carried extra water, another managed ropes, and a third kept watch for potential hazards. Each assignment was deliberate, teaching them to function as a cohesive unit under her leadership. She explained subtle survival techniques, how to detect weak snow, how to ration energy, and how to stay mentally alert despite exhaustion. Slowly, the soldiers began to adopt her methods, their skills and confidence growing with every mile. The terrain grew increasingly hazardous. Steep cliffs, snow-laden slopes, and dense forests presented obstacles that would have daunted even experienced adults. Emma's ability to read the land and anticipate dangers kept the group alive. She would pause frequently to examine the snow, probe for hidden crevices, and instruct the soldiers on subtle adjustments to balance and movement. At one point, a sudden snowdrift threatened to bury them, but Emma's quick thinking and the strategic placement of ropes prevented disaster. Her calm decisiveness in moments of crisis saved them repeatedly. Exhaustion and hunger were constant companions, but Emma kept the group moving. She encouraged them with quiet, steady words, instilling discipline and patience. "We move carefully, step by step," she repeated like a mantra. She also emphasized observation, teaching the soldiers to detect danger early weak ice, shifting snow, or subtle signs of animal activity. Her training became their lifeline. The soldiers, once skeptical of her youth and quiet demeanor, now relied on her instinctively, trusting every decision she made. By late afternoon, they reached a ridge overlooking the valley below. Emma surveyed the landscape, identifying the safest route to continue their descent. The sun reflected off the snow, blinding in patches, and the wind intensified. Yet Emma remained calm, directing the soldiers with precision. She assessed each soldier's condition again, making minor adjustments to clothing, bandages, and hydration. Every detail mattered. Her quiet, unwavering presence transformed the group from disoriented survivors into a disciplined, coordinated team, moving together with purpose and trust. As night fell, the temperature dropped sharply. Emma constructed another temporary shelter, using snow and branches to protect the soldiers from wind and frostbite. She lit a small fire, melted snow for water, and rationed the remaining food carefully. They huddled together, their exhaustion palpable, yet hope flickered in their eyes. They had survived because of her. They were alive, and they owed that life to the quiet girl who had refused to back down in the face of impossible odds. Emma kept watch through the night, alert to every sound and movement. Wolves howled in the distance, branches cracked under the weight of snow, and the wind roared through the valley. She monitored the soldiers' breathing, adjusted positions to prevent frostbite, and prepared for the next day's trek. Sleep came in short, restless intervals, but her mind never wavered. Every decision, every adjustment, every instruction was crucial. Lives depended on her competence, resilience, and courage. By dawn, Emma led the group onward once more. The path ahead was steep and dangerous, with ice-covered cliffs and hidden crevices threatening to derail their progress. Her instructions were clear: move carefully, one at a time, follow my lead, and maintain focus. Each soldier mirrored her movements, learning and adapting under her guidance. Their initial skepticism had transformed into complete trust, and together they navigated obstacles that would have overwhelmed anyone less skilled or less composed. Hours later, Emma paused at another clearing. The sun reflected off the ice, dazzling and disorienting. She used the moment to check on the soldiers, offering quiet reassurance. "We've made incredible progress," she said. "Stay focused. Every step forward is a step toward safety." Her calm confidence bolstered their morale. The journey was far from over, but with Emma leading them, hope outweighed fear. She had transformed a desperate situation into a controlled, calculated effort to survive. The night settled over the valley, bringing with it freezing winds and dense snowfall. Emma constructed yet another shelter, ensuring the soldiers were protected and hydrated. She monitored their condition, adjusted clothing, and checked injuries. Exhaustion threatened to overwhelm them, but she maintained vigilance, understanding that survival required constant attention and foresight. Every step, every precaution, every quiet decision contributed to the group's continued safety. By the end of the day, Emma Larson had led the soldiers through more terrain than anyone could have expected, demonstrating leadership, ingenuity, and unwavering courage. She had transformed fear into strategy, despair into determination, and skepticism into trust. The quiet girl from Alaska, underestimated and overlooked by nearly everyone, had become the lifeline for 6 soldiers navigating one of the most dangerous landscapes on Earth. The early morning sun barely penetrated the thick cloud cover as Emma Larson led the group forward. The snow was relentless, falling in heavy sheets that obscured vision and covered every landmark she had memorized over the previous days. The soldiers followed closely, fatigue etched into every face, muscles stiff from the relentless climb and descent through icy terrain. Emma's eyes, sharp and alert, scanned every inch of the path ahead. This final stretch would be the most dangerous yet, the point where even the smallest misstep could have fatal consequences. The landscape grew more treacherous with every step. Jagged cliffs rose on one side, while deep crevices and partially frozen rivers sprawled across the valley below. Snowdrifts concealed weak ice bridges, and the wind howled like a predator, threatening to sweep them off balance. Emma paused frequently, assessing each section of the terrain and devising a plan for safe passage. Her mind worked like a finely tuned instrument, constantly recalculating, predicting potential hazards, and preparing solutions before problems could arise. "Stay close," she instructed, her voice calm but firm. "Move slowly, step by step. One slip, and we risk everything." The soldiers, though exhausted, trusted her implicitly now. Each had witnessed her precision, courage, and uncanny ability to read the wilderness. They followed her instructions, mirroring her careful movements, knowing that their survival depended on her skill. Emma felt a quiet satisfaction in their trust, but there was no time to linger. The wilderness offered no mercy. The first obstacle appeared within minutes. A narrow ice-covered ridge, barely 2 feet wide, stretching across a deep ravine. One wrong step would mean falling into the freezing abyss below. Emma tested the ice carefully, probing each section with her pole before stepping. She tied a rope to a sturdy rock on one end, securing it for support. "One at a time," she instructed. "Hold the rope tight. Don't rush." Step by step, she guided the soldiers across the ridge. The wind gusted violently, threatening to unbalance them. One soldier froze, fear overtaking him, and his foot slipped slightly. Emma's hand shot out instinctively, grabbing him and steadying his weight. "Focus, one step." "You're safe," she whispered. Relief washed over the group as each soldier made it across, their confidence in Emma's leadership solidifying further. The next challenge was a partially frozen river, its rushing waters visible through thin ice patches. Emma knelt, probing with the pole and assessing the weight the ice could hold. "We'll go slowly," she said. "Follow my steps exactly. Test each patch before committing your weight." She led the soldiers across, moving with deliberate precision. The river's roar echoed ominously, but Emma's calm, authoritative presence reassured them. Each soldier, once hesitant, now trusted her implicitly, moving with a rhythm and caution that mirrored her own. Hours passed, each obstacle more dangerous than the last. Steep slopes, hidden crevices, and overhanging ice formations demanded constant vigilance. Emma rotated tasks among the soldiers. Some helped manage ropes. Others watched for falling snow or shifting ice, and a few carried essential supplies. Every decision was calculated, every action deliberate. She knew the wilderness would test them to the limit, and she ensured that no one moved recklessly. Each step was survival, each breath a measure of determination. By mid-afternoon, Emma spotted an avalanche-prone slope ahead. Snow had accumulated heavily, and the slightest disturbance could trigger a deadly slide. She assessed the terrain carefully, calculating the safest route and the order in which the soldiers should move. "We'll cross in short bursts," she instructed. "Stay low, avoid sudden movements, and follow me precisely." One by one, they navigated the unstable snow, Emma leading the way with unparalleled focus. The slope groaned under the weight of accumulated snow, but her careful movements prevented disaster. As they crossed, a distant rumble grew louder. An avalanche had begun, triggered by the shifting snow above. Emma's heart pounded, but she maintained calm. "Run! Keep moving! Follow the path we marked," she shouted, her voice cutting through the roar of the collapsing snow. The soldiers sprinted behind her, adrenaline surging, every step a delicate balance of speed and caution. The avalanche thundered past, missing them by mere feet. Relief washed over the group, but there was no time to celebrate. Safety still lay miles away. The final challenge loomed, a steep cliff leading to a narrow passage that would take them out of the hazardous valley. The cliff face was icy and jagged, and the wind whipped fiercely against them. Emma tied multiple ropes, securing them to rocks and trees, then demonstrated the safest way down. Step by step, she guided the soldiers, ensuring each one maintained balance and grip. Her muscles ached, her fingers burned from the cold, but she never wavered. The soldiers followed, trust in her unshakable leadership, giving them courage to face the final obstacle. One soldier slipped near the bottom, sliding dangerously toward a jagged outcrop. Emma lunged, grabbing his arm and anchoring him to a rope. "Hold tight. You're safe," she said, her voice steady but urgent. With careful guidance, he regained footing. The soldiers reached the base of the cliff, exhaustion visible on every face, yet a sense of triumph filled the air. They had survived the most dangerous stretch of the wilderness because of Emma's skill, courage, and unwavering focus. The last leg of the journey involved traversing a dense forest that would lead them to a small ranger station civilization, warmth, and safety. The soldiers moved slowly, fatigue evident in every step, yet Emma's presence motivated them to keep going. She monitored each movement, checked for injuries, and provided encouragement. Her quiet, unyielding determination kept the group moving forward, transforming despair into hope. By late evening, the group reached a clearing where the ranger station lights flickered in the distance. Emma allowed herself a small smile. Safety was near, but she remained vigilant. The soldiers, some still shaking from cold and fear, now followed her with quiet admiration. They understood that this quiet girl from Alaska, underestimated and overlooked by nearly everyone, had led them through the impossible. Every decision, every calculated step, had brought them closer to life. As they approached the station, rangers emerged, prepared to assist the exhausted group. The soldiers turned to Emma, their eyes filled with gratitude and awe. One of them, the leader, said simply, "We wouldn't have made it without you. You saved us." Emma's quiet smile was her only response. Words were unnecessary. The truth of her heroism was evident in the eyes of those she had guided to safety. That night, as the soldiers rested in the warmth of the ranger station, Emma stepped outside, breathing in the cold Alaskan air. The wilderness, harsh and indifferent, had tested her, but she had emerged victorious. She had confronted storms, avalanches, frozen rivers, and near-death encounters with calm precision, courage, and ingenuity. The quiet girl from Alaska, once overlooked, had become a symbol of resilience, skill, and unwavering determination. A hero in the truest sense. As she looked up at the snow-laden mountains, Emma reflected on the journey. Every step, every challenge, every decision had brought her here, not for recognition or praise, but because survival demanded courage, intelligence, and action. The soldiers were safe, the impossible had been achieved, and she had proven that even the quietest, most underestimated people could accomplish extraordinary feats. The wilderness had tested her to the limit, and she had not only survived, she had saved lives. The first lights of dawn painted the snow in pale gold as Emma Larson led the soldiers out of the dense forest. The rugged wilderness that had tested their endurance, courage, and skill for days lay behind them, replaced by the familiar, comforting outlines of the ranger station, and beyond it, the distant silhouette of Willow Creek. Exhaustion weighed on everyone, yet a quiet energy fueled their steps, the energy of relief, triumph, and survival. After days of facing the unforgiving Alaskan wilderness, they were finally within reach of safety. The soldiers' injuries had been stabilized, thanks to Emma's skill and foresight, but their bodies still carried the marks of the grueling journey. Frostbite, bruises, and raw, wind-chapped skin. Yet their eyes shone with gratitude and awe as they followed her through the final stretch. The storm, the snow, and the deadly terrain had challenged them all, but it was Emma's calm, strategic leadership that had carried them through. She was not just a guide. She had been their anchor in the chaos, their strategist in danger, and their lifeline in the wilderness. As they reached the clearing where the ranger station lights flickered, rangers emerged to meet them, eyes wide in astonishment. "We thought you were lost," one of the officers said, voice trembling. Emma nodded quietly, her focus never leaving the soldiers she had brought with her. The first soldier stepped forward, his voice thick with emotion. "We wouldn't have made it without her. She saved us all." The others echoed his sentiments, their words a chorus of awe and gratitude. Emma simply smiled, humble and reserved, her work complete. The soldiers were led inside to the warmth and safety of the ranger station, where medical teams attended to their injuries and exhaustion. Emma watched silently, her mind replaying the journey, the frozen rivers, the avalanche, the treacherous cliffs, the relentless wind, and the moments when lives hung by the narrowest thread. She had faced every challenge with calm precision and unwavering focus, guiding 6 trained soldiers through terrain that even seasoned experts often avoided. And now they were alive, safe, and forever indebted to her courage. Word of the miraculous rescue spread rapidly through Willow Creek. Families of the missing soldiers were notified, and soon tearful reunions unfolded. Mothers, fathers, wives, and siblings embraced their loved ones, overwhelmed with relief. News crews arrived, eager to document the extraordinary story of survival and heroism. The soldiers recounted their ordeal, emphasizing Emma's leadership, courage, and unyielding calm. In every account, one truth stood out. Without her, none of them would have returned. Despite the growing attention, Emma remained quiet, her focus still on the soldiers and their well-being. She refused the spotlight, her modesty as strong as her courage. Yet the impact of her actions could not be ignored. Local authorities arranged for awards and recognition, and the soldiers themselves insisted on honoring the young woman who had defied the impossible. The town of Willow Creek gathered in the central hall, the fire crackling as the community celebrated the extraordinary feat of survival and bravery. During the ceremony, the mayor addressed the crowd, his voice thick with emotion. "Today, we honor not only bravery but wisdom, courage, and the spirit of perseverance. Emma Larson, a quiet girl from our town, has shown us all what true heroism looks like. She has saved 6 lives against impossible odds, demonstrating skill, intelligence, and unwavering determination." Applause erupted, filling the room. Soldiers, families, and townspeople rose in unison, many with tears in their eyes, recognizing the remarkable journey Emma had led them through. Emma accepted the recognition quietly, standing tall yet humble. She spoke briefly, her words deliberate and measured. "The wilderness is unforgiving," she said. "It demands respect, knowledge, and courage. I did what I had to do to help these soldiers survive. We all relied on one another, and together we made it through." Her statement was simple, but its power resonated deeply. She had transformed fear into strategy, chaos into coordination, and despair into hope, not just for the soldiers, but for everyone who had witnessed her journey. The soldiers, now fully recovered, joined her in a final acknowledgement. One by one, they spoke of the quiet girl who had led them through snow, ice, and near impossible conditions. Their words painted a vivid picture of Emma's composure in crisis, her meticulous attention to detail, and her unshakable determination. "She was calm when we were terrified," one soldier said. "She guided us step by step, and her judgment never wavered. We owe our lives to her." Each testimony reinforced the truth. Emma Larson had become a symbol of resilience, courage, and heroism. In the days that followed, Emma returned to her normal life, yet the experience had left an indelible mark. The soldiers remained close, their bond with her unbreakable. Willow Creek hailed her as a local hero, and news of her deeds spread far beyond the town. But despite recognition, awards, and accolades, Emma remained grounded. She continued to explore the Alaskan wilderness, now with a profound understanding of her own limits and strengths, and with the knowledge that courage and skill could overcome even the most unforgiving challenges. The story of the quiet Alaska girl who returned with 6 missing soldiers became legendary, inspiring countless others. Schools taught about her perseverance. Local newspapers printed detailed accounts of her survival skills, and families across the state marveled at her courage. Yet for Emma, the true reward was knowing that 6 lives had been saved, that families had been reunited, and that she had faced the wilderness with calm, intelligence, and determination. The recognition, though meaningful, was secondary to the quiet satisfaction of a mission accomplished. Years later, the story continued to inspire. Emma Larson became a symbol of resilience, courage, and determination, a reminder that even the quietest, most unassuming individuals could achieve extraordinary feats. The soldiers she saved remained lifelong friends, their bond forged in the snow and ice of the Alaskan wilderness. Willow Creek honored her legacy through community awards, lectures on survival skills, and annual events celebrating courage. And through it all, Emma remained humble, focused not on fame, but on the knowledge that true heroism often comes in quiet, unexpected forms. Her journey through the wilderness, fraught with peril and uncertainty, had revealed more than survival skills. It had revealed the strength of human spirit, the power of trust, and the extraordinary capabilities that lie within those who are underestimated. Emma's story reminded the world that courage is not measured by size, age, or recognition, but by the willingness to act decisively in the face of unimaginable challenges. She had faced the impossible, and through her intelligence, determination, and unwavering focus, she had prevailed. As the snow settled over Willow Creek that winter, the town reflected on the extraordinary journey of Emma Larson. Her story became legend, not only for the lives she saved, but for the example she set. That bravery, skill, and quiet determination could overcome even the most formidable obstacles. The soldiers she rescued never forgot the young girl who had guided them through life-threatening terrain. And Emma, ever humble, continued to live her life with the same quiet resolve that had defined her journey from the very beginning, a journey that had begun with courage, led through danger, and ended in triumph. The wilderness, once a place of threat and peril, had become a testament to her resilience. The rivers, cliffs, and snowfields that had tested her limits now stood as silent witnesses to her heroism. Emma Larson had not only saved 6 soldiers, she had demonstrated that even in the harshest conditions, with courage, skill, and unwavering determination, survival and triumph were possible. And in the hearts of those who witnessed her journey, her story would live forever, a beacon of hope, courage, and the extraordinary power of one quiet, determined individual.